March 31st, 2015. The Ochelli Effect is live on UCY.tv. I want to thank everybody who decided to tune in, even the brawlers in the chat room. Thank you so much. And yes, Dalnik, or however you say that nickname, you are perfectly allowed to sit and listen and not participate in the chat room if that's what you choose to do. Anyway, thanks, guys. Do appreciate it. And want to say that it's been a kind of a strange day for me. I mean, the day started off with the power and the water and everything else getting shut off at the homestead here, so it was a big, fun day and a little shucking and jiving and trying to pull things off to keep that all together. But hey, here I am once again on a Tuesday night, and I have no idea what they play on Monday night, by the way, so I don't even advertise the Rewind, but apparently people hear it, and I don't know what's going on over there. I have no idea what show you're referencing, so when you ask questions about random shows on Monday, I need to know what they are. Okay. Thanks, guys. Do appreciate it. I've been kind of treated to a slew of emails and stuff lately, and I'm going to try and grab Roger Landry, because he's the first hour guest, of course. Let's see. So I'm going to grab Roger, who, of course, is the founder of the Liberty Beacon, and I do appreciate the fact that I've been able to work with Roger and work with the Liberty Beacon and to be a part of all of that. After all, you guys need to go to thelibertybeacon.com. Okay, thelibertybeacon.com. Okay, and you don't type the all one word part, by the way. Okay, so I know we have some interesting topics to get to tonight, but let me just first say I've been dealing with an avalanche of correspondence from the last couple of shows, and apparently people like to take screenshots of things and hand it out to other minions when I make announcements about things that I'm going to do on this show. Like later this week, I'm going to have somebody who was there, who was a firefighter in New York City, come on and discuss what he saw when Building 7 collapsed. Okay, and he's been on another network, yes, but he really didn't have a lot of time to speak. I'm going to give him 2 hours to tell you that story, because that's the kind of thing I do. And, you know, speaking to him off the air, I guaranteed him that I would not in any way censor what he had to say. So I have no idea what's going to happen on that show. I didn't sit there and pre-interview him. That's not what I do. I don't do these things from a major script. I don't choreograph this. This is not how it goes. Okay? So be ready for that. And if you're going to pass around screenshots to people who are fans of other alternative media people and have them send me avalanches of emails at an email address that I don't even really give out to anybody, you kind of tip your own hand, just so you know that. Okay. Anyway, between that and the controversy with the whole JFK thing earlier in the week, that lit up the Facebook stuff so that now I'm like lost on all that nonsense. But you know what I want to get back to? Is the real discussions about the real problems in the world. And don't worry, I will revisit 9/11 and JFK from time to time, I guarantee you, because I can't stop myself from pointing out when there's all these problems. I mean, we're going to go on to the phony war on terror and everything else. But you know what? There's a whole lot more going on in the world. And this is one of the reasons why I do love the Liberty Beacon. Roger, how are you tonight, sir? We missed you last week.
Yeah, but I was approached by our senior admin for our new site in the Middle East, the Middle East Rising, with a request that she be allowed to have a 2-hour venue. And I very, very willingly gave up that spot. You and I are going to have many, many weeks going forward where we're going to have a lot of time to discuss many issues. So understanding Ariana's passion and her energy level on these topics, how could I refuse her?
No, absolutely. And the only thing is, she actually holds back on the air. I want to hopefully be part of convincing her that she doesn't need to do that and she needs to fully express herself, because actually the passion she has for the subject she's talking about are well beyond what we got to present on this show.
Well, wait until, and the launching should probably be this week, the launching of the Middle East Rising website and the inaugural show for her series, which she'll be doing a pre-recorded radio series for us, a weekly series, also called The Middle East Rising. And I can tell you that when she is doing her own show, I don't think you'll find those same reservations. This woman has the utmost respect for everybody and anybody, until, of course, you prove that she's wrong and the respect was never deserved in the first place. Then she turns into a tigress. I can't imagine you doing that, Chuck. And the last thing she wants to do is to bring strife down on you because of some of the things she coulda, woulda, but didn't say. So, yes, we will convince her. But I think you will probably end up by being one of her guests on her show, and I think you might find the venue to be a little bit different at that point.
Well, that's, definitely great, and of course, accentuating, a lot of the ridiculousness about this phony war on terror, which is the biggest nonsense ever perpetrated. Well, maybe not ever. There's a lot of competition for all sorts of disinformation out there, but
it's only nonsense if you're on our side of the fence. If you're on the other side of the fence, it is a well thought out, well instigated, well choreographed plan. It is accomplishing exactly what it's supposed to.
Yeah,
That's the subjugation of the American people.
Right, not a bad strategy when you're trying to rope sheep, I guess, is to use something like that. But, if you actually, approach critical thinkers with this kind of stuff and people that actually take the time to examine situations for themselves, well, not necessarily faced with the same thing, are you?
I agree, and I would like to say one thing to the listening audience. I need to tell you that if you are in the class of individuals or the category of individuals that we term as sheep, people who are afraid to get up and do anything because of fear of reprisal, these are what sheep are, okay? I need to explain something to you. Being a sheep is always terminal because every sheep eventually ends up in the slaughterhouse.
Absolutely. And, if not sheared first.
Well, they shear them many times, but they eventually reach a point where the wool is not the best in the world, and they're getting on, and they can't have babies, and so on and so forth. And then they are sent to the slaughterhouse to be used for feed, to be used for meat, to go to market, to be used for. But, the inevitability is being a sheep is a terminal condition.
No, absolutely. And of course, one of the aspects by which they turn human beings into sheep has a lot to do with what we're going to discuss here.
Oh, I
Okay.
big news today.
You
Big news.
have you have big news. Okay, well, I didn't know that, but
That's this is. That's what I gave you.
oh, okay, okay. I thought you had something else. I never know with you,
No,
Roger. I never know with you. You know.
this is huge. And what you're seeing, I know you haven't had time to listen to the podcast that's part of that article, but when you get a chance, listen. And I will describe a little bit more on your show today so people actually understand just how big this actually is going to be.
Mm. And this is another one of those situations where you're going to find, my ears perked up because, as I said, the concept of drug addiction, the concept of the proliferation of drugs in general, is one of the major control mechanisms in the society. I mean,
Gee, who's the biggest drug dealer on the planet? That wouldn't be, part of the alphabet soup.
well, yeah,
Someone like the CIA, would it? Come on.
well. Pick one. I mean, it could be them. It could be them, or it could be some other level of the alphabet soup working with them, or if you want to pick from another very good, reliable, decent answer, you could also talk about the large corporations that do it in a allegedly legal context as well. I'm not sure. There's
You
a
mean
lot of
by
competition.
laundering their money? The banksters?
Laundering the money. Let's talk about big pharma pushing out, things like opiates
Oh,
onto the
I know
public.
too.
I
Yes.
mean, all of these things are all valid causes to call somebody a drug dealer, basically. Some of them are legalized, some of them are legitimized, some of them are ignored, some of them are just simply, allowed to exist in one way or another, right? But it doesn't matter.
No.
It's all the same thing. It's
Yes.
all the same thing. And I know I guarantee that's one of the areas we're going to go into here. And I'm sorry, I know I've been talking too much, but it's been a weird week, Roger. And I'm going to talk to you off the air about how you might want to brace yourself for being associated with me if things keep up the way they're going. Because apparently I've angered some people. So
Can
be
I
ready.
explain something to you? Let me butt in right there, okay? I pick and choose my friends, and the Liberty Beacon picks and chooses its partners, its staff members, and its affiliates, not by who else likes them, but by the truth they are willing to stand up and deliver regardless of the consequences. This being the case, I can give a crap less who comes to me and says anything about you, Chuck, because what they're going to receive from me, and I'm quite capable of, is a tongue lashing, the likes of which they've never had.
Well, I do hope so because I have somehow managed to cause a minor a minor eruption of outrage from a bunch of different corners, and I know that these are not corners that you're afraid of. I know these are not corners that you're going to feel like as if your allegiance is split. But wait until you see what happens, because I'm just starting to get a flavor of this stuff, and it's hysterical. So
Chuck, I have had an entire network trolled and ripped out from under me. Everybody who isn't aware of this, there was an organization that I founded prior to the Liberty Beacon Project, and it was called WTPN. And believe me, I have been through the worst of the worst, but what shows our strength of character is that we believe enough in the truth that regardless of the pressure that is applied to us and from which direction it comes, we remain willing to tell the truth.
there you go. And you always put it in such an eloquent way. Well, anyway, without further ado, I want to go into this because I first of all, the title is just great, and I'm going to make sure I drop that into the chat room in just a minute here, if the computer will cooperate. Because as I said,
Anybody
the
who
power
reads
was out.
this,
The power was out earlier, so I was incommunicado for quite a while. So I'm
anybody who
playing
reads
catch up.
this, I strongly recommend. It's only a 30-minute recording, a discussion between the two gentlemen we're going to discuss and myself, but it is 30 minutes of absolutely worthwhile and must listen to conversation.
Right. It's a TLB special. This is the title of the article, by the way. A TLB special. Let's see now. Walking the Kingdom, a 4,000 plus mile walk to promote drug education for our children. Now, I'm very sure, without even looking down on the article at all, and there it goes in the chat for you guys. I'm very sure, without looking down on the article at all, that what we are talking about is an actual education about drugs and not this, touchy-feely nonsense where they're basically programming and still promoting the drug use in one way, shape, or form, and teaching you political correctness about it. No, this is about the reality of the situation, and I can say that blindly.
Yes, it is. And let me get through this because we have a lot to discuss once I'm done.
Okay.
There are so many. This is a huge roundhouse, and it is covered with doors. There are so many doors into this subject. And when I was a kid, we used to have a joke: Mary, Mary, run for the roundhouse. They can't corner you there.
Mm.
Well, this is exactly what we're talking about on this subject. So let me get through this article real quick, Chuck, and then I'm sure that we can take this off in so many directions that we will be very, very sad that we only have about 44 minutes left to discuss this.
Right.
All right. So again, as Chuck has so eloquently put, the title of this article and the show is a TLB special, Walking the Kingdom, a 4,000 plus mile walk to promote drug education for our children. And here goes the article. Every once in a while, an individual steps out from the crowd to be recognized for endeavors far beyond what most consider normal or even doable. They willingly sacrifice their time, effort, and endurance for a cause they believe in so deeply that doing the nearly impossible becomes an attainable goal. Steve Cook is just such an individual, and his cause is of vital importance: our children. Walking the Kingdom. In the UK, the Liberty Beacon's very own Steve Cook is preparing to undertake the undertaking of a lifetime, a 4,000 plus mile walk of the entire British coast. Yes, 4,197 miles is what I believe it is, but I could be plus or minus a few miles. Please don't take me to task on that. Steve is a published author and senior admin of TLB's UK website, Go Forward Together. And in what can be best described as a drastic departure from his unusual his usual pursuits as a writer, starting on the 1st of May this year, he will hike alone the entire coast of England, Scotland, and Wales, passing through over 1,000 coastal towns and villages over a period of about 9 months. And he will do this without taking a week off here, a week off there. Basically 20 miles a day, every single day. He's been doing practice walks now for quite a while. 20 miles has become something usual for him, not unusual. When Steve completes this mega hike at the end of this year or early 2016, depending on how things go, we believe he will, at the age of 63 and a granddad, be the oldest man to ever having done something like this, and fewer than basically he's done something that fewer men have done than have walked on the surface of the moon. This is destined to become a major publicity event for a needed cause, with TLB promoting it internationally. This will be promoted in Australia, in New Zealand, in South Africa, in Canada, in the United States, and in several other European countries. TLB is promoting this on an international basis. We are proud to be associated with this and promote this massive undertaking. Not merely because Steve is one of our own, but because the cause for which he is taking action and putting himself through such a test of endurance. So, why on earth, we hear you asking, would a man put himself through so much? What cause could inspire such an effort? Okay, we happen to believe, along with Steve, that it is a cause well worth extraordinary effort if we wish to take positive action to build a better world. Although Steve happens to be based in the UK and this event will be taking place there, its importance extends beyond the bounds of one country and embraces the entire global community, especially what we call the first world or the industrialized world. It concerns the futures of our children who will become tomorrow's adults and in whose health, soundness of mind, and happiness we all have a vested interest and a moral duty to foster. Our children are our most valuable resource and our very future. So, what is this cause and what does he intend to achieve? Drugs are a blight on humanity, with special emphasis on our vulnerable and easily influenced children and young adults. Bringing awareness of the chronic dangers associated with drug use to them at an early and impressionable age is vital to these intelligent souls making sound decisions that will seriously influence their entire future. Steve hopes to bring this subject forward in their minds and that of their parents in a massive and global fashion. Could there be a more noble cause? Please listen to the recorded TLB special, Walking the Kingdom, on the TLB radio network, and that is linked below in the article to find out much more. In this special broadcast, I discuss the project and the mission with Steve and special guest Peter Dawn. Peter is a former British Thai boxing champion, the champion of all of the UK in Thai boxing, and turned into a crusading drug educator, working hard to educate our impressionable children with the dangers and pitfalls of drug use. This is a show you don't want to miss. It's 30 minutes. It won't take up much time, but the discussion from these two extremely intelligent and very prolific individuals is just the beginning. Now, that's the end of the article. Let me tag a little bit more onto that. This is what we intend to do. As of the 1st of next month, well, actually the 1st of the following month, because this is the 31st. Tomorrow is April Fool's. So if we were doing this show tomorrow, I could say as of the 1st of next month. But I will say that as of the 1st of the next month plus 1 day, the 1st of May, this gentleman will take off on an over 4,000-mile walk. Let's put that into perspective. That is hundreds of miles wider than from the widest point on the East Coast to the West Coast of the continental United States. Yes, it is that far. We absolutely drop jaw in amazement when people ride bikes across several states or across the country. This man is walking. No mechanical aid whatsoever. He will be carrying a 10-kilo backpack with a computer that will allow him to give daily updates, which we will post across all of the 15, actually soon to be 18 TLB websites globally. So there will be daily updates from Steve on his walk. Every week, Peter Dawn, the gentleman I described to you, who was the UK champion Thai kickboxer and now is a drug counselor who spends his time traveling across the world speaking to kids of grade school aged. And the significance of that you and I will talk about after I'm done here, Chuck. So he is eminently qualified to do a 30-minute show with me each week. During that 30-minute show, and this is a 9-month project, my friends. So every week for 9 months, at the same time, same day, every week, Peter and I will do a 30-minute show on Stephen's progress, and Peter will give us more information on how we can save the futures of so many children globally. So now we're talking about daily updates, which will be in the form of videos that Stephen will put out from the road every day, and a weekly show with Peter. And we will also have Stephen come in for a portion of that 30-minute show so he can say hello to everybody and tell us any plans he might have for the following week. We're in the process of putting together a team to contact every one of the over 1,000 towns across this 4,000 plus mile course that Steve will walk. There are over 1,000 towns, and we are in the process of getting a hold of each and every one of those towns. Bed and breakfasts are big, or small family-owned hotels that maybe have a half a dozen or a dozen rooms. They're very big in Great Britain. I know because I spent almost 6 years in Great Britain doing work for the U.S. military. Yes, I was a U.S. Defense contractor. So, and that shouldn't be news to anybody. I've told everybody that many times.
Right.
But so we're in the process of contacting all of these bed and breakfasts or hotels, small family-owned hotels across Great Britain. We want this guy, every time he walks into a town, to have a comfortable place to sleep and a free meal he can sit down and eat over the course of the evening. Of course, a lot of these bed and breakfast and small hotel owners will see this as a way to advertise their business. We don't care how they see it. What we want them to do is become part of something that is going to take place across a larger course than less human beings than you can count on your hand have walked that many miles in an unbroken chain. So this is going to be a massive undertaking, and it is going to be massively promoted across the globe. This is an issue that doesn't just, it's not just an issue in the UK. It's a huge issue in America. It's a huge issue in Canada. It's a huge issue in Germany, in Australia, in New Zealand, and in Finland, and I could go on and on. It's not so much an issue in the poorer countries, what we would call the third world or the developing world, but in what we call the first world or the industrialized nations, it is an issue in each and every society. The portion of our population that is the most vulnerable to this are children of grade school approaching middle school age, those from 9 to 11 years old. Because at 9 to 11 years old, think back, people, that's when you were deciding what you wanted to do later in your life. That's when you were deciding which classes you wanted to major and minor in. That's when you were deciding that the girl next door who was budding looked awful sweet, and you just really didn't know why yet, but you just couldn't get your eyes off of her. So these are the kids at the most impressionable stage of their life. This is the time you reach out to them and tell them the damage that cocaine can do, the damage that methamphetamines can do, the damage that heroin can do, and all of the new designer drugs being splashed across the planet on a daily basis. This is the time you reach these children. And if you reach them, they are at a point in their life where their intellect is sharp, where they can be influenced and understand the meaning of that influence if it is given to them via the mechanism of truth. Because believe it or not, they're going to go on the internet after you instruct them, after you counsel them, and they're going to check up on what you said. So you better be giving them the truth. Peter is going to, and yes, Peter will be doing every week, that 30-minute show with me, you will be amazed at what this UK champion kickboxer, Thai kickboxer, the message he imparts is phenomenal. But we will reach out, but not only to that impressionable child, and try and formulate the ideas into his head to help steer him away from ruining his life, but we will reach out to the parents of these children and the grandparents of these children and the advocates of these children. And we will bring them on board. This, as far as I know, will be the most massive drug educational program ever instituted on a grassroots level on this planet. Is that big enough news for you, Chuck?
It works for me. It definitely works for me. Now, here we go, because we've done this so many times before and never scripted, and we never choreographed this, Roger.
No, we don't have to.
But here's the thing. I'm going to take issue with something you said, and here's the funny part. You're going to probably agree with me at the end, and I'm just predicting, agree with me at the end for the most part, but then add in even more interesting thoughts to it. Okay, I made my prediction. You said that this is not so much a problem in the third world countries. But I beg to differ, and here's why. No, you don't have the drug use problem in a lot of places, but how many bodies are piled up in third world nations, okay, as a result of the cartels operating the way they do.
You're hitting below the belt, because that's part of what I wanted to talk about. Not only do I agree with you, but that's where I was going next.
Good.
That's why I isolated and made sure people understood I was talking first world, third world.
Right. I mean, let's start with the first world, the easiest thing to embrace, the easiest thing to understand, especially for people that have the internet, that have the ability to hear this stuff, that are really following alternative media. Yeah, you're most likely in a first world place. Okay, so you could understand, you can internalize, you can conceptualize the nonsense around you, the things, the horrible impact of this entire industry, whether it be from the so-called legitimate ones or from the illicit street stuff that is out there. It doesn't really matter. Bottom line, and of course, I know I'm going to get an email, so let me just qualify this really quickly. Simply because I have the support idea for hemp and also for legalized marijuana, and this is me, not Roger, okay, speaking.
So do I.
Does not mean, but I knew you were going to do that. But, but the thing is, that is not part of this issue.
No,
that is exactly where I'm going with that. So save yourself the time and aggravation of sending me those messages. Thank you. Now, moving on. The third world deals with all of these resonant effects. There are, children farmers, children soldiers. There are plenty of kids that are being affected in the third world. And guess what? If we wind up, perfect world, yeah, here we go again with the utopian ideas, but if we wind up in a world where this is not so prolific, if we wind up in a world where, cocaine trafficking and money laundering are not high risk, high businesses that need to be propagated because there are plenty of customers out there, for the meth and for the whatever the hell else, God knows what they created, since the days I was well aware of the deeper drug culture. But you know what? If we actually stopped having customers, there might not be a need for the exploitation that goes on in the third world in numerous ways.
Well, I need to step in right now because,
Please.
And I apologize for interrupting, but anybody who puts any doubt at all in what you just heard from Chuck, I want you to go to either Google or Bing and do an image search on, let's say, the opium plants or the opium farms in, say, Afghanistan. I will guarantee you will come across very few pictures in which you do not see a child, meaning someone under the age of, say, 18 years old, tending those fields. This is very graphic. It's very open. It's very easy to see. It's very prolific. How many children in Colombia do you think are in virtual slavery tending the fields, the coca fields? How many? I could go on and on and on. But yes, we do see that it is as a result of so many people in America, so many people in the UK, so many people in Australia, so many people in Canada, and I could go on, making the demand or facilitating the demand for these drugs, that these children in the third world are being forced into this type of slave labor to produce the damn drugs for you.
Right.
So we facilitate their slavery via our habits. So when I say we are stepping up with this project, Walking the Kingdom, to bring to the awareness of children across this planet the danger they face with with deciding to go down the path of using these drugs, it is also equally or even more vital that we reach the adults, because as the adults utilizing these drugs on a regular basis, we facilitate that very slavery that these children are forced into. So yes, it is an issue in the first world, but it is a blight in the third world.
Which means that collectively, it is actually what you said in the first place, which is a blight on the planet.
It is.
And there is nobody that's missed by this. We're not, you're not being missed by this because you have, yuppie fatigue syndrome or whatever the hell that
I've
was.
never heard that.
Yeah, I mean, there were these, syndromes from, being too involved in, in go-getting and things like that in the Western world. This is not one of those issues. This is something that resonates throughout the planet because of, and because of, and absolutely utilizes that almost like international caste system, which, has people that are born into slavery in certain ways, has others that are absolutely, this is their only choice. And not only that, Roger, let's not forget this, is that these kids and other people that are, working those farms and doing the harvesting you're talking about, a lot of them are actually quite addicted to the drugs now too, because what are they inhaling all day? You think they have safety masks on? Do you think that they're, not handling this stuff? You think they don't go through withdrawal if you pull them out of those fields? Guess what?
Well, not only do they, but again, you said handling. Because a lot of these opiates can be absorbed right through the skin. Your skin is very porous. Okay, you need to understand that. That's why you sweat. You have pores. It's a two-way street, okay? But let's go one step further. Let's talk about one more evil, and then I want to get into legal drugs, pharmaceuticals, okay? But let's go one step further with this issue of so many of these whole families, children, parents, grandparents working these fields. You, again, I dare you to go do a search of Afghan opium farms, okay? And very, very few of them won't contain pictures of U.S. and NATO soldiers, mostly U.S., believe it or not, protecting those opium fields from being invaded by criminals who would steal the crop. That's right. Your brothers and sisters who are in Afghanistan, a lot of them are actually patrolling the opium fields to keep them safe. Stop and think about what I just said. The amount of opium coming out of Afghanistan today is at record levels and has been since the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. We protect the opium crop in Afghanistan. Stop and think about this, my friends. How many of you would willingly go and do that? But if you're a soldier and you're in Afghanistan and your commanding officer tells you you will do this, you have very little choice but to do that. So we run the gambit from the absolutely legal, okay, which it is legal to grow in Afghanistan, all the way through to the illegal and slavery. And it all culminates in the drugs that hit our streets and poison the mind of the future of humanity, which is our children. We must reach these children not when they're adults or when they're about to hit adulthood. We must reach these children when they are most impressionable and leave a lasting impression on them. That's the 9 to 11-year-old children. This is when the mind is deciding what it wishes and what it plans. This is when the mind and the intellect is becoming sharp. This is exactly what Stephen and Peter wish to do. Peter doesn't go around the world talking to college students. He doesn't go around the world talking to high school students. He goes around the world talking to middle school students. And like in America, it would be, say, from the 6th to the 8th grade. This is when these kids are the most impressionable, and this is when we must reach them.
You got it. And you know what else? I'm seeing comments through my Skype and also in the chat room. Yes, the CIA brings in heroin. Not only heroin, but we've already busted them with the coke. And I do this all the time. Roger, just bear with me for like 45 seconds because I do my little walk.
I need to take a breath.
I do my little walk through the illicit drug history, and the crossover with the military-industrial complex and the alphabet agency's participation.
I agree with your comments, and that would have been the next path I was going down, but I will allow you to walk that path, my friend, because I know you do it so well.
Oh, well, just let me do this, and then I know you will just add to it, okay? Here's the thing. We take a look at Vietnam. I'll just begin in my lifetime, and when I was born, the Vietnam War was raging still, okay? Now, during that time that we were engaged in Vietnam and our intelligence agencies were also engaged in Vietnam, our military assets, all that ugly war that gave us that guilt syndrome and all that good stuff. Okay, didn't end until the mid-'70s. It was long. It was rather one of our longest wars up until we were in Afghanistan, but I digress. Now, we were engaged in that, and what did we see as a drug scourge on the streets of America and illicit drugs? Magically, we saw heroin appear as a cheap and abundant source of illicit drug activity on the streets of the United States, and in fact, the majority of the Western world, but most profoundly in the U.S. Isn't it amazing that the Golden Triangle was right there? We had plenty of access to it. It seemed to just make its way here magically. Well, after we finished our time there in Southeast Asia, there seemed to be another new illicit drug scourge. Right on time, of course, cocaine. First powder cocaine, but then later on crack cocaine became extremely plentiful in this country. Nobody owning a coca field. Interesting. Nobody was making it in their sink. Nobody was creating it in their backyards. No. What did we find out? Well, it just so happens that we were all kinds of involved with some military assets, but plenty of intel assets in South America, which is a wonderful climate. South and Central America, which is a wonderful climate for growing coca plants, isn't it? So right on time, while we're engaged in all of that kind of good stuff, what do we get? But cocaine raining down on especially the urban areas, but believe me, everywhere in the United States, cocaine was readily, easily available and rather cheap. Now, what happens? Well, they get a little bit busted. They got to take a little time off because Iran-Contra kind of threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into things. And all of a sudden, you had urban scientists who seem to come up with all these wonderful new designer illicit drugs. Suddenly, the knowledge became plentiful among people. You can create other drugs because we sort of screwed our own condom, South and Central America.
We screwed our own condom?
Conduit,
I'll leave that one alone. Okay.
I know. I heard the slip and I went, damn, I know that's going to go out there and somebody's going to make jokes. But conduit, which was all of those adventures into South and Central America, the supporting of death squads, the flipping of regimes, all that other wonderful stuff we were doing. But in the meantime, plenty of crack cocaine. See Gary Webb. Anyway, like I said, for a little while they had to take a break. And then all of a sudden, post 9/11 especially, when all of that stuff seemed to be losing steam, amazingly, we have an explosion once again on the streets of America in illicit drug land. See, there's 3 trips over my tongue during one statement. Keeping score at home, that's 3. Now, during that time, all of a sudden, post 9/11, it seems as though we have a heroin epidemic in a whole lot of major cities and areas in this country, all over the place. The illicit drugs have come back. Heroin is cheap. Heroin is plentiful. And wouldn't you know, we just happen to be occupying and being involved in and having intelligence assets in a place called Afghanistan, which wasn't growing a whole lot of opium until our people got there and hooked up with those Northern Alliance fellas who seem to be so much better than those Taliban fellas, even though they were funding themselves with opium crops, and they were just about beaten until we intervened. But you see, that's just a big coincidence, isn't it? And meanwhile,
don't use that word with me.
And meanwhile, the heroin epidemic continues, and there is a plentiful supply of,
opiates.
Opiates of all sorts post 9/11. And have we extracted ourselves from Afghanistan? Not yet. But when we do, we may see a new drug scourge if the pattern persists, if the coincidences continue. Right, Todd?
Well, I need to, because we've got like 14 minutes left, I need to interject or we need to walk down another path. on one of the shows, I did with you, I talked about legal drugs. I talked about pharmaceuticals. I talked about the fact that America has the biggest drug issue on this planet, with about 1/3 of the entire population being hooked on either mind-altering or mind-bending drugs, psychotropic or psychiatric drugs. I also talked a lot about our children being forced on drugs such as whether they're drugs to allow them to have a little bit more energy if they're lethargic, or drugs to calm them down if they're hyperactive, or whatever. So we have an epidemic in this country of drug use of the legal type, pharmaceutical drugs. When you walk down the street, 1 out of every 3 people on average that passes by you is in freaking La La Land. They're on another planet. They're taking a legal prescribed drug that bends the mind and alters the way they think. Every single mass shooting in recent history in this country can be tied back to some sort of a mind-altering drug, either psychotropic or psychiatric drugs, that either facilitates a very aggressive action or thoughts of suicide. We suffer this on a higher and more massive scale than any other nation on this planet. And gee, if I told you that the two top lobbying groups in Washington, D.C., the 2 lobbying groups that literally own and run our government are the military-industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industry. Okay? We suffer the biggest drug problem on the planet via legal pharmaceuticals. And there are so many parents out there, if their child acts up a little bit in school, the school will recommend a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You take your child to that psychologist or psychiatrist. They will, in 80% of those cases or better, recommend some sort of a psychiatric or psychotropic drug for your child. And in a lot of cases, if you refuse to have your child drugged, CPS will come and remove your child from the home. So it's not just the children we need to reach. We are looking at the dumbing down and the addicting via legal pharmaceuticals of a massive portion of our most valuable and prized resource in this country, our children. So we don't just need to reach and influence these children. We need to reach and influence these parents, because if they don't step up to the plate and push back against this, within a generation, it is predicted that better than as many as 60%, some researchers say, of our children will be on prescribed drugs. And then we will see the loss of an entire generation to facilitating the advancement of America. And this, my friends, is intentional. So don't just think we're focusing on the children. It's the people listening to this show we're focusing on as well. We need your help.
Well, because the mindset needs to be changed. What's happened here is just like with antibiotics, which have caused us all sorts of other troubles. These things, even if they were remotely necessary, which we can argue about that all day, that in some cases these things are extremely necessary. But the bottom line is that they are being overprescribed, overdumped into the population. And this, I can't find anybody who is remotely logical, in my estimation, to disagree with me about it, is that this stuff is being just pushed. This is why they're no different than any other drug dealer.
Yeah, but hold on. The Supreme Court, a recent decision from the Supreme Court, okay? You want to know how far the corruption goes? A recent decision from the Supreme Court states that pharmaceutical companies do not have to disclose the blacker side or the massive negative impact of their drugs. There is an article on the Liberty Beacon. Go look for it. And it's one of the most recent articles. It won't take you long to find it. Just look in the health section. The Supreme Court has stated that these drug companies are not going to be held to every single negative side, reporting every single negative side effect of their drugs. And they cannot be sued for not disclosing them. This is your Supreme Court.
And that's the thing, is that every single institution that is allegedly out there to protect you, the FDA, the CDC, every single one of these things, the courts are there to make sure that the constitutionality of things that's going on is still being, being maintained, that the integrity of it's all in somebody's pocket.
How many drugs have been put on the street, and you must understand, before any drug that has any strength or any side effects whatsoever has to be approved by the FDA before it ever hits the street. How many drugs can you think of over the last decade alone? We won't even go back the last couple generations because the number will increase exponentially. But how many drugs have big pharmaceutical companies put out, approved by the FDA as safe, only to end up by killing millions? No, I'm not exaggerating. Do some research, people, only to have the FDA say, okay, this is dangerous. We're going to pull it off the market, but only after Big Pharma has made huge profits on these drugs. Stop and think about this. The FDA does not do their own research. They allow these drug companies to do research and then tell the FDA, we did the research and this stuff is safe.
Right.
All right.
And you know what what
That's called complicity.
that is complicity, and I'll tell you what the wonderful loophole is, and I never advise people to do this, but I'm going to advise you to. Ready? Flip on the TV for about a half hour. Flip on the
I
TV
know
for
where
about
you're
a half
going.
hour because you're going to be treated to lawyers who are ready to give you all sorts of lawsuits for things that were prescribed to millions of people because they did everything from grow breasts on your little boy to killing people. Okay, that's what, and that sounds funny, but then again, take a look at the new products. Maybe they've made their mistakes and they've learned, Roger. No, 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 no. How many of them, no matter what they are, include death? Death.
Thoughts of suicide,
Thoughts of suicide.
possible cancer, kidney failure.
And it's not just pills. It's not just pills. I saw something. Now you're going to think that this is hysterical and that I'm being ridiculous, but I am not making this up. I sat and made sure I saw it twice to understand that there was a cream, okay, which was
Yes.
meant for postmenopausal women to make it easier for them to have intercourse without pain. Okay, that is the advertised purpose for the product.
What are the side effects?
Cancer, bleeding, death, possible suicidal ideation. I said, for
Well,
a lubricant, lubricant.
we talk about thimerosal in vaccines. It's mercury being extremely poisonous, and we shoot it straight into our bloodstreams. That's one of the components in some of the vaccines that your children receive. It's mercury, okay? It's ethyl mercury, and it is extremely toxic to the human brain and the central nervous system. What most people don't understand is a lot of the topical creams, okay, that you use and the makeup women put on their face every single day contains thimerosal. And your body, I'll say this again, is very porous. You put it on your body and it gets absorbed into the system. So, yes, I do understand that something as simple as cosmetics, face cream, or blush,
I'll give you one
is
better.
killing you.
I'll give you one better. You know that tearless, baby shampoo?
Yeah,
Okay.
Johnson and Johnson's.
No, not their brand. I'm not going to mention the brand. Okay.
I know it's one of their brands, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, but I'm not going to mention the brand. But here's what literally happened. I got the 9-month-old. Okay.
Yes.
Baby shampoo in my house. Just because it was randomly bought, it was a spur of the moment thing. It needed to be bought. Baby shampoo. Okay. We keep the kid clean. We do. Guess what's in it, Roger?
I would throw a bunch of things at you, but I'd like to hear you say it.
Oh, formaldehyde.
Oh, absolutely.
Formaldehyde is present in baby shampoos. Some of them. Read the labels.
You and I have talked about aluminum coming down from the skies, from geoengineering, aluminum in vaccines, aluminum in the soil, aluminum in the water, and how poisonous aluminum is. Well, let me explain something to you. If you have gastrointestinal issues, if you have agita, if you have gut problems and you're constantly chewing antacid tablets, they're loaded with aluminum. They're poisoning your brain. Every time you relieve the tension on your stomach, you are poisoning your brain. And the amount of aluminum in antacids is above what the EPA says is a toxic level for any human being to receive over the course of a day.
Yeah.
So we're not, let me wrap up here because I got about 2.5 minutes. We are talking about a scourge on our children. We're not only talking about illicit or illegal drugs. We're not only talking about designer drugs. We're talking about legally prescribed drugs because a lot of kids, I remember high school, will get a hold of pills from their parents who are so doped up most of the time they never notice. They steal pills from their parents. They go in and they sell them at school. Kids get hooked on amphetamines, legally prescribed amphetamines. Kids get hooked on opiates, legally prescribed pills that contain opiates. This We're talking about drugs of any type that can alter the thinking process of a 9 to an 11-year-old child, because this is the point in their life where their intellect is coming into focus,
Right.
where their choices for their life are coming into focus. We need to reach these children on a global scale and inform them of what can happen. They are smart kids at that age. We need to give them the alternatives, but we need to tell them the truth, because these kids are smart enough to go home after you talk to them and they're going to do some research. And that makes our mission even more effective. The Liberty Beacon Project is going to sponsor the Walk the Kingdom project very heavily for a 9-month period. You will see weekly shows for 30 minutes. You will see daily video updates from the field from Steve. We will have experts on every week to discuss the drug issue, covering the legal drug issue, the designer drug issue, and the illicit natural drug issues. We will cover it all. We will blanket the globe with this. This is going to be the most massive anti-drug or drug awareness project ever accomplished in the history of this planet. And you heard it all first on the Chuck Ochelli Show.
You got it. Roger, it is always a privilege and a pleasure to have you on here. I really do appreciate all your time, and I know you got to get going. And I've also got somebody interesting lined up in the second hour who is not necessarily related to the Liberty Beacon, but I have a feeling you would not disapprove of the discussion we're about to have. Her name is Kira Young.
How did I know it was a she?
Yeah.
I just guessed, but yep, I hit it right, didn't I?
I seem to have a lot more female guests than some other people do. I don't know what that's about, but
80% of my guests are female.
Yeah, I think you and I seem to pick from the same types of crops.
I won't say women are smarter than men, but what I will say is that women are so aware of the dangers being presented to their children nowadays. They are more willing to speak out.
You know what? I think that's got a lot to do with it. And, of course, that show where we sat and talked about moms across America and all that, that definitely comes into play here. So, Roger, I'm going to let you go. But, look, before you do go, I want to tell everybody you have got to go check out the websites that we were talking about tonight. Middle East Rising is coming. That
this week, actually.
Is this week?
Yep.
Oh, great. I've been looking forward to that website for, I think, a year at least, Roger.
7 months.
7 months. It seems like a year.
Yeah, I know.
It's probably because I've been just waiting, and I'm one of these people who's like, I want it now.
Yes.
That's people like that, I know. I'm trying to be patient about a lot of things, but but we are working on it. Okay. Anyway, back to it. The thing is, go to the Liberty Beacon, put it all together as one word, thelibertybeacon.com. You can see the article we discussed tonight, as well as the ones that Roger referenced, and a hell of a lot more at that website. And also The Falling Darkness, which is all one word, also.com. It's slightly different edge on the Liberty Beacon, but the Liberty Beacon has a lot of affiliate and partnered websites that I would definitely want you guys to turn your attention to.
Yes.
So there we go. And Roger, I can't thank you enough. And I know you're busy, and I know you're going to have a action-filled night one way or another.
Yes.
And I wish you good luck with whatever it is you're doing. So,
as always, Chuck, thank you very much, and I'll be talking to you next Tuesday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger.
Bye.
Bye. Anyway, so here's the. And here's the thing. I mean, I absolutely, support this kind of thing, and, and love the fact that Roger is getting into, real drug education, which gives people a completely, wide view and realistic view of the complete panopticon of big pharma and the illicit drugs and all of these corrupt institutions. Man, if we could kick that leg out from under the giant control grid, wouldn't that be a hell of an accomplishment? I would take my ball and go home if we destroyed that whole industry. Anyway. In the second hour, as I have said a few times, I have Kira Young, which she will be on with me just shortly. And I am not quite as familiar with Kira as I think I'm going to want to be, especially based on the fact that if you go to her WordPress site, the first thing that jumps out at you is Psychopaths in Charge, which immediately tells me I've come to the right place. So, Kira, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
No, never a problem when we're talking about the kind of issue that I know we're going to wind up covering tonight. But for people that don't know who you are, though, I mean, I'd love for you to give them just an idea of who you are in general, and also, I'll try and drop the links to first of all your web. Here we go. See, that's 4 times, and that's unusual for me to trip over my tongue 4 times in a show, but you got it tonight. Okay. I will definitely drop the link to your WordPress site into the chat room. See how I took my time with that? Okay. Anyway, sorry, Kira. I just want you to kind of do that and give people an idea of who you are from your own mouth before we move on into the subject at hand, and I'll drop those links. So go ahead.
All right. Well, the reason the blog is called Psychopaths in Charge is that basically, if you look at any really big problem in the world, that's what it goes back to, the fact that psychopaths are running things. I was also inspired to start the blog by the work of Thomas Sheridan, who wrote Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. I had discovered his work because I was struggling with working for a psychopath. So I read everything. Once I figured out what I was dealing with, I read everything I could about it. And I didn't find anything helpful until I ran across Thomas Sheridan's work. And then I created that blog, and he saw the blog and he liked it. And so we've kind of been friends ever since, and working together, doing shows. And that's how I got into radio too, was by going on his show and then starting my own. So that's why it's called that. And really seriously, if you look at any problem, it's because there's pathological people running this planet. And it's actually at the point where it's thought of as leadership skills. Pathological people are thought of as leaders when they're really pathological because it's become part of the culture to think of pathology as leadership instead of true leadership.
Yeah, it seems to have become a prerequisite to achieving any sort of position of authority at this point, that you have to have some sort of disturbed pathology, some sort of anti-human pathology, actually. That's the only way that you seem to be able to embrace power, or to be able to operate in the centers of power in the modern world at this point.
Right, and it's been going on for a long time. And I think it's I really see it sort of as an infection when on the cultural level. And I think it started probably in the Middle East, just guessing. But wars have been going on for centuries. Okay. But when one culture takes over another culture and replaces its religion, that's when this infection seems to be able to really take root. Once a culture's religion and language and mode of being is taken over by, for instance, just for Europeans who, were taken over by Christianity. Christianity is really a foreign mode of spirituality. So I'm sort of in favor of Europeans taking back their true heritage.
Well, yeah, interesting. Yeah, absolutely interesting that you bring that up, because I have a minor affinity for Roman history, and here's the thing, that this is to me where the genesis of what you're talking about comes from, because it was the Roman way to just about make everything Roman. I mean, for God's sake, if you even look at the road system, in England at this point, that was based upon Roman architecture. Okay, but this all, the Roman Empire was not always a Christian empire, though. So. Right. Once the Christianity was seized upon, during the time Constantine was emperor, as I believe as a political mechanism, initially, in order to sort of subjugate certain other tribes. I think that was part of the strategy there, but it seemed to have taken a weird twist and kind of grown out of control, and the infection took over the host, or the parasite took over the host, as it were. And of course, the empire was, ever after doomed. But don't we kind of see that sort of resonated throughout history, and even as far back as that, we see the infiltration of this sort of imperialistic normalcy that comes over other indigenous people, and I mean, far beyond the idea of even, and of course we could look at American history as well, except, as opposed to completely infiltrating and controlling the population. I mean, the original settlers here came and decimated the existing indigenous people entirely, so much that there really wasn't much left to control. But this is still still a workable strategy, right?
Right. And it's actually, in a way, we're given a gift, because the infection is not, it's 500 years old here in America, whereas the infection is far older in Europe. And so it's a little bit easier to reach back pre-infection here. But it shouldn't lead to, appropriating other people's life ways or culture or religion or archetypes or anything like that. I mean, for myself, I'm both Native and European, so and I would encourage others who are both to really claim all that they are, not just Native and not just, European, but claim all you are, whatever you are. So in America, we have this 500 years of the infection. And so maybe if we really look at it deep enough, we can begin to heal the infection here and then keep going back. But what's happening now is that there's this really authentic reclamation, Europeans reclaiming their old archetypes, their old religions, and that there's a group of people that really wants to take over that. And it is a spiritual thing, as well as a political thing. And, what I'm talking about here is neo-Nazis want to take that over. So they want to take what Europeans are discovering about themselves, that, hey, we were colonized before we became colonizers. So what do we do with that information? Well, the neo-Nazis want to take that and turn it back into hate again. So that's also another thing that's going on very, very strongly right now, especially in the alternative media.
Oh, right. I mean, there is, quite a prolific sort of, I don't even know what it is, but there's like a culture now that is rising that seems to be, really tolerant of intolerance. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, okay, without even getting into naming names, because I don't want to do that. Okay, because, God knows I don't want to sit here having to defend, because you wind up having to defend and attack people that you don't necessarily want to when you start flipping names around. But I mean, in general, there seems to be this kind of a schism where you have very sort of angry, almost irrational, hate-based sort of philosophies being pushed in certain sectors of what was alternative media. What are you seeing? Personally, I mean, I have my own views on this, but I mean, I'm having you on to discuss yours. What are your views on that?
Well, what I'm seeing is that it starts out as, no, we're just anti-Zionist and we're just pro whatever we are, whatever European, and it's this white nationalism thing, which is utterly ridiculous because there is no white nation. There are no white nations. White is something made up in America and imported to Europe. Something because there's a lot of different kinds of white people in the world. And so the whole concept of white people was invented in America. And underneath it all, it means nothing. Even the whole science, and I'm putting that in, the quotation marks, of race is pretty sketchy as well. I would say that it's really tied into eugenics, that there's scientists back in the 1800s, they took what they thought was right, which is hierarchy, and then they tried to wrap a science around it instead of science where you're supposed to let what is revealed to you lead to your conclusions. So that's why the science of race doesn't even make sense, and why there's so many anomalies, and why we're all anomalies, is because essentially it's made up. There is no science behind race.
Well, right.
We're all mixed, and we always all have been mixed. There is no such thing as a pure race. There's no such thing as a white race. There's no such thing as a black race. It's not that there isn't racism, because certainly there is. Because there certainly is.
See,
racism.
But that's more of a divide and conquer strategy. If you can keep us fighting with each other, we certainly won't turn on the people that are really controlling the situation. And meanwhile, look, I'm somebody who is not afraid to say that, I'm against the idea of Zionism, that's for sure. I'm against that, but I'm also willing to throw out there that, the Catholic Church is an institution that disturbs me as well and has wielded power throughout history. I have been really badly sort of attacked privately about that, and I don't care. It's the reality as far as I'm concerned. A lot of these larger institutions that seek to control thought and that seek to promote the idea of superiority among people, and hierarchy, which is a whole lot better of a word than superiority and all this. Really, hierarchy is one of the great poisons of the social structure, because you don't by birthright necessarily have a place in a hierarchy. This is an illusion and a delusion, really. And the fact is, okay, I've said this several times too. I mean, I identify myself as, I'm American, of course, but my ancestors are Sicilian and Irish. Now, that means that from the Sicilian side, the reality speaks that even if you were to believe that this whole concept of racial science was a reality, I'm an original mutt. On that side, there is no way that I could be identified as anything directly. There used to be even the concept told to me that I was Afro-Italian, of course, because there had to be black blood in me, which meant, something. I don't know what. But, I don't really particularly care. I'm a human being, and that's all I am, and I appear to be one of these white people. But the reality is, all of the things that are locked in our genetic memory, in our genetics at this point, they're still discovering what's what, and yeah, you get certain traits, you'll develop certain types of appearances, based on that, genetic record. But at the end of the day, you're either a human being or you're not, and that's that.
Yeah. And if you go onto some of these sites that actually the hook that they use is anti-Zionism, and I'm not saying that that there's anything wrong with being anti-Zionist, because of course it's another control system. It's another way of looking at the control system. Okay,
right.
But that's the anti-Zionism is the hook that the neo-Nazis use to reel you in, and before you know it, it's we hate Jews. And you go onto some of these sites and try to engage, and they actually think of white people as a different species, and not only a different species than people of other, and I put in quotation marks, races, but an endangered species. So you get this this rhetoric about white genocide, That's another thing that keeps coming up is this white genocide, which is complete and utter nonsense. There is no white genocide. It's just not happening. It's another illusion that's out there for us, and some of these sites, I mean, I got called a wagon burner, for
Wait, a wagon burner?
a wagon burner.
What?
Yes.
I'm unfamiliar with the term. What is the meaning of that term?
It's a racist term for neo-Nazis that they use for American Indians.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't imagine what that meant.
I mean, and also I'm anti-white because I challenge their racist notions. I'm anti-white, and I'm like, well, have you seen my profile picture? Because that's actually a picture of me, and I'm kind of pale.
Yeah,
So
I am looking at you right now, and I gotta say, I would not have actually guessed Native American off the bat.
yeah, I'm mostly Scotch-Irish, actually.
There you go.
I'm also Choctaw. Yeah.
No,
So I'm a mutt just like you.
Okay, so yeah, you're a mutt too. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on the same level in the hierarchy. That's a joke,
Right.
obviously, but the thing at wagon burner, that's a weird one to me.
Yeah.
Right.
And the hook is always, we're just for our race. And then once you get reeled in, it's actually we hate everybody else and we're better than them. So it's that superiority/inferiority complex that comes in. And I think that's really directly tied to the infection that we were talking about earlier.
Well, you know why? Because this goes through a whole lot more than just white people. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I have literally seen, and this is when I was younger, mind you, but I literally saw younger, mostly Native American, in their lineage, apparently, or at least that's what they were telling me. I mean, to tell you the truth, I mean, I to differentiate is a little difficult for me, but okay, I believed what they were telling me. Explaining to me, things like that they believed that, quite radically they needed to essentially take back the country from everybody else who's here, and this type of thing, and this kind of rhetoric. And it just seemed to me, and I looked at them after a little while, and it was just a group of people that I got introduced to as a musician at the time, because I had, quote-unquote radical views. So, people try and introduce people with radical views together to watch the show. But they sat there and they were really going through this very impassioned kind of, serious, like, hate whitey speech, and how the American Indians need to, rain blood in the streets and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, literally, this is a true thing. And I looked at them and I said, don't you think this is a little bit counterproductive? And and of course, that was the end of me being able to talk to them. But I just thought...
And it's counterproductive for everyone, isn't it?
Well, that was my point, is that no matter who you are, if you start embracing the idea that you're superior and that everybody else is, perfectly acceptable victims of whatever movement you want to make happen because of your beliefs, I'm sorry, but gets right back to that word psychopath to me,
Mm-hmm. Well, the infection has taken over Indian country as well, so nobody is safe from the infection.
No one's immune, in other words.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, we can talk about how we might understand how a person who grew up on a reservation would be afraid of and or hate white people.
No, I'm not saying that's
the experiences.
No, absolutely. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's completely unjustified rage. What I'm saying is that when you take it to the extreme and you want to go after people because you think that you have some right, regardless of what it is, regardless of the history, regardless of what history you've been taught, and I argue all the time that the majority of the history you've been taught is a lie anyway, but regardless of what it is you've learned or understood or, internalize and what it is you feel as though your rights are, at the end of the day, if you're, impressing them upon others and causing harm, it's the same damn thing. And it doesn't matter from which, racial hierarchy you're looking at things. If there's a superiority within any particular clique that you've imagined you're part of, and you now use it to justify your rage, this is a very dangerous sort of game you're playing,
Mm-hmm. Yes, for everyone too. And, those who preach separatism or, it's a pipe dream. It's a rage-filled pipe dream that you're going to get rid of all the non-Indians in the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to happen. So the best way to move forward is to celebrate your own culture without demeaning other people's culture. And believe me, racism is real. My husband is full-blooded American Indian, and he has very classic Plains Indian features. And when we go places, I drive, because if he drives, we will get pulled over. I mean, it's just a given. There's things like that, people who are American Indian and look American Indian deal with on a daily basis. And I don't blame them for being pissed off, but we're still all responsible for our actions and what we do with our anger. Because, anger can be a really powerful, creative force. And I've learned, I'm almost 46 now. I've learned to use my anger, because I will admit it freely. I am pissed. I am mad. Okay. But I use it. I use it as a creative force to open other people's eyes to the game, to what's really going on. Mm. And that's the only way we're going to move forward but for kids, I understand it. I certainly wouldn't encourage it, but at the same time, I think those kids probably needed to be listened to by someone, and maybe steered in a different direction, like gently steered.
Right.
Creative direction.
And if the idea of hierarchy were extracted from the psychology of the masses, a lot of this stuff would vanish overnight. That's what a lot of it comes down to. And profiling is kind of a different issue to me in a way, because, but then again, if you remove hierarchy from the equation, I can't even imagine a world where that's not part of the equation. You know what I mean? So that's
why I like to get together with anarchist philosophers, and we can imagine what that world would be like. I think it would be a good thing. And I think we probably at one time in our human history had a world like that, where we were small sort of hunter-gatherers, living freely, without a centralized armed authority controlling our every move. Mm. So I think we all sort of want that again, because it's somewhere in our ancestral memory that it's a possibility for us. So.
No, absolutely. And, at this point, I want to interject also that you do a radio show. And I want to talk about that, too, a little bit, because I'm kind of jealous of one of your guests, first of all. But I wonder if you would tell people about that, where they can find it and everything.
Okay. Well, I'm on People's Internet Radios, peoplesinternetradio.com. To find my past shows, you just go to the podcasts and schedules and then scroll down to Saturday night. Click on me. You find all my past shows. If you want to listen to me live, I'm live every Saturday night from 7 to 9 Eastern.
Right at the same time, just about, as I am.
Yeah.
But that's okay. There's always a way to.
Podcasts are for.
you got it. But interesting is also it's called The Bridge, right?
The Bridge with Kira, yes.
Mm-hmm. The Bridge with Kira. And the reason why I said I was jealous of one of your guests, and this kind of fits into the whole racial issue to me, is your show with Abraham Bolden. Now, I am a long-time JFK guy. I was a JFK researcher, known on the internet as the Blind JFK Researcher, and I've done many a show featuring that particular subject from a lot of different angles. And Abraham Bolden is one of those guys who I fully support. Do believe that he was absolutely railroaded and wronged. But of course, the politics of race come into play in the Abraham Bolden story. And
Yes.
you have it linked here along with a discussion on the Secret Service and the recent, ridiculousness coming out of there. And of course, Abraham Bolden has been talking for years about the insane culture that existed, in 1963, of course, but Secret Service misdeeds, let's just say, less than exemplary actions, for half a century now, easily measured. And of course, Abraham Bolden is a prime example of that. And hey, I'll let you talk about Abraham Bolden if you want for a minute.
Sure. I mean, he was the first black Secret Service agent detailed to President Kennedy's detail. And he noticed a lot of drinking and sort of just not really doing a good job. And really worried him.
Sorry, handpicked by President Kennedy, actually, to be to be the first black Secret Service agent to ever serve on a presidential detail. Yes. So go ahead. And
that's not his only first. He was also actually the first black detective in Chicago as well. So he was a lot of firsts. Definitely took his job very seriously, whatever he was doing. Very professional. And he was railroaded for complaining and saying, because he knew, and it was a spiritual thing for him too. He knew that President Kennedy was going to get assassinated. He felt it, he knew it, and he tried everything within his power to prevent it. And he paid dearly for it. What they did was they framed him for bribery, and he was convicted with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And they tortured him in prison too. And experimented on him.
Right, he was drugged and tortured in prison. Of course, he wrote a book, Echoes from Dealey Plaza, and I definitely recommend it for everybody out there. Of course, Abraham Bolden is also the source for the Edwin Black article, which told us all about the Chicago plot previous to Dallas. But he was also in a lot of trouble after he was getting ready to go speak to those fellas at the Warren Commission, wasn't he?
He was, yes, yes. And I would be happy to put you in touch with him. I'm sure he would be happy to come on your show. He's happy to get the attention that he deserves. And he's still asking President Obama to pardon him, and he should be pardoned.
Right, and I've signed that. I'm sure you signed that petition. I signed that petition as well. He deserves a pardon. He was absolutely railroaded. The complete circus that trial that they, the alleged trial they gave him is just absolutely repugnant at best. The fact is he was absolutely railroaded because he was going to tell it like it was, and that is that, look, a bunch of hungover Secret Service agents aren't going to react very quickly, no matter whether it was in Dallas or Chicago or elsewhere, and it was really a stroke of luck that they disrupted the plot in Chicago. Of course, Abraham has something to say about that as well. I would love to have this guy as a guest anytime. I consider him an absolute American hero. So, if you would do that, I would love to have that done. Of course, you haven't only done shows like that, and I have a train going by at an odd time of day, so I don't know if you can hear that. You hear it?
Yes.
That thing's killing me. All right, sorry about that. Live radio, though, it's the way it goes. That to me was one of the shows that jumped out at me. Of course, I'm a JFK nut and all that, but I wonder if you wouldn't give a couple of other highlights really quickly of some of the shows you've done, some of the topics you've covered.
Okay. Well, along the lines of the whole neo-Nazi in the alternative media, I've sort of taken that on with several shows. I started with Andras Jones of Radio8Ball.com and continued the conversation with Alan Epidesa Green of SyncBook.com. And then I also had conversations with Tom Secker of SpyCulture.com, Pierce Redman of Porkins Policy Review, and Thomas Sheridan. And we've all sort of hashed this out. Many of those guests have been on a alternative radio show that has sort of turned neo-Nazi, or more focused on the sort of neo-Nazi white genocide thing, and so they really wanted to sort of separate themselves from that whole thing, and a lot of them were really surprised by it because that's not what they're about, and they just thought that this was sort of an open forum, and then they were just like, wow, that's a little too open, and so I've had a lot of discussions about that, discussions about cults, very destructive in the alternative media. There's a lot of cults on social media that hook people with really good stories about psychopaths, with really good stories about all kinds of anything that you can imagine you're into.
Well,
there's a story out there to
cults,
hook you to a site that's linked to a cult.
Oh, yeah. Cult activity is something that I'm rather fascinated with. I mean, the Jonestown thing, fascinates me to no end. A whole lot of the other stories, and the Charles Manson story has always fascinated me from the time I was a kid. Of course, I have come to believe in recent years that a lot of that is a fiction made up, and a lot of it has been propagated ever after to feed to the subcultures, as it were. But what are modern cults you're talking about, huh?
Yes, and in the UK particularly, there's quite a few sort of flying saucer cults these days that are, that honestly believe they're like channeling information from aliens. There's the flat Earth thing that's come up and really infiltrated the alternative media in the UK. People that honestly are like totally convinced that the Earth is flat, and
See,
if you don't,
flat Earth to me has always been a joke. Like, when I'll be honest with you, when we talk, when I used to talk to people about the JFK assassination, I used to refer to people that absolutely believed that that Oswald was the only guilty party, and that's the end of the story. The Warren Commission had it correct as the Flat Earth Society.
right?
But nowadays, there's something new, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's disturbing. It really is. It's kind of scary. It's like, what's going on here? Um, but so I found a lot of people on my Facebook friends list who were starting to share this and this stuff. And UK Column is one of the outlets that's sharing flat Earth information. And the other thing that's going on is that there's a pedophile problem actually all over the world, but in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of the hysteria around it really helping true victims, there's a lot of really just out there stuff that just really isn't true. And so the wrong people are getting hunted down for it, or people that there's just no evidence that they've ever done anything. That's
a lot like the satanic panic that went on in the 80s and 90s in America, huh?
Yes, that's hardcore going on in the UK and Ireland right now, is the satanic panic. Yeah, and there's a lot of folks in the alternative media that everything is like the Illuminati and Satanists. I mean, just everything. So...
Well, and there you go. See, and I'll tell you what the purpose of this stuff is, and it's really, I mean, I'm sure but I mean, just for the listeners' edification, I figure, let's explain this. Why is this happening? Well, when you have people out there that are telling the truth, if you can infiltrate and create, side-by-side individuals with them, if you can add all sorts of wonderful disinformation people along with them, okay, either directly or by design, well, what happens? You end up with being able to sort of lump everybody together in one ball, okay, and say, a guy like, I'll use myself, a guy like me is, one of these people who believes these crazy things just like all these others, so therefore it further marginalizes anybody who's actually out there to try and speak the truth. I mean,
right.
And I don't understand why it is that more people are seeming to get sucked into all of these other alternative kind of fringe areas, at a time when I really thought we were just about to make progress, except, of course, again, that's, the strategy speaking again. But do you wonder why this seems to be, like, really ramping up about now?
I do, and I mean, I have some theories, and I think they're really closely in line with yours. Is that it's to take any attention away from what's actually going on, and to just distract people. It's a distraction, and I wouldn't be surprised if the people who put stuff like out there, stuff like this, really study, because this is what psychopaths do, right? They study people to see what they emotionally react to, because they don't have the ability they don't have the same type of emotional makeup that normal people have.
Oh, right.
So
A true psychopath operates on a completely different emotional matrix from an average or typical, human being.
right,
So,
right,
so they actually study, learn to assimilate their actions to simulate, others and things like that, so that they, appear to be relatively normal. But
right,
the truth is, they actually don't have any legitimate emotional context for it themselves. This is a reality of that particular, pathology.
right.
That's the bottom line.
So if you
But
scale it up, that's what the sort of string pullers are doing, is that they're looking at what affects people emotionally, and they're putting that stuff out there because that's going to be the best distraction. Whatever's going to get people emotionally upset. And of course, babies getting raped really upsets people, and that's a normal reaction, right?
mm-hmm.
So that's why that stuff is out there. Race really gets people excited, and so that's out there. Anything that's going to get people's blood boiling, get people amped, cause a physiological response, is going to get put out there. And so it really behooves us to look at the sources of these stories. There's a lot of faux news sites out there that are really, a lot of them are really mostly far right Christian. Now, I use the term Christian like with the little, quotation marks too, because different people have different ideas about what it means to be a Christian, but they have an agenda, and that's to usher in the apocalypse. I mean, that's really their agenda, because they believe this stuff. So,
Well, yeah, and you ever notice that this stuff gets commingled? The idea of not only, believing that an apocalypse is upon us, but actually, doing things to incite it.
right.
Seems to be, again, this is cult-like behavior. But the thing is, you ever notice that always seems to get mixed in with all these other ideas as well? So it's like, the concept of the apocalypse is also, akin to, you know what I mean? Like, it just continuously gets stacked upon itself.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're hoping it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or if they just, some of them really just believe this and they think they're doing God's work by destroying the earth,
Right.
and all its inhabitants, somehow, it doesn't compute for me, but for these whack jobs, it does.
Right, and this again has become one of your main focuses, and I am sorry, I do tend to run my mouth. That's why I have a talk radio show, but I do want to just do what I always do toward the latter part of any discussion I have with anybody, and tell you that, look, I'm going to shut up a minute and just let you speak your mind about these things, or let you speak your mind about anything that you think is a pressing issue at the moment, about your focus, or, hey, if there's just something that grabbed you today, it's fine too. Whatever it is, it's your floor, and I'll shut up for the next few minutes. So
Right.
go right ahead.
Well, my last show that I did this past Saturday was with Aaron Franz, who's of theageoftransitions.com. and he wrote a book called Revolve: Man's Scientific Rise to Godhood, and it's about transhumanism. So anybody out there wanting to check out my stuff, please check out that show. It was a really good show. We were able to bring in a lot of current events that are happening right now to show the transhuman agenda now. We brought in Angelina Jolie, and the very next day, this whole poor kids have smaller brains thing came out. That's eugenics, clear as day. We didn't get to that because it didn't come out till like today, but we were able to bring a lot into it so that it's not only just theory, or it's not only just look, these organizations exist and this is their agenda. It's look at the agenda right now. It's going on right before our very eyes. So that's a good one. Transhumanism, the average person doesn't know what the heck it is, but it affects your life every single day. It's in everything that you watch as far as entertainment. It's in movies, it's in TV, it's all over the place. And so it's an important issue for us to look at and reclaim our humanness once again. And our biggest way to do that is really through our creativity. So I encourage anyone to get involved. A lot of people talk about how everyone has a radio show and everyone has a blog, and some don't think that's a good thing, but I think it is a good thing. I think people need to tell their stories, and in that way we can come together and develop our compassion. It's like a muscle, and it's really all we got. Our creativity and our compassion is really are the best tools that we have in the situation that we find ourselves in, where this planet has been run by psychopaths for centuries. And so I guess that would be my rant.
Okay. Listen, no problem. And of course, right away in the chat room, Jules said Jules said it's the issue, because if she does a radio show in the morning called Before the First Cup, and believe me, you just say transhumanism to Jules and you have 2 weeks worth of shows. That's all there is to it, and it is one of the most precarious things in the world that we are teetering on this age when artificial intelligence may become something of another race. Something that we may not be able to control. And of course, just like all of the wonderful predictive programming that we have enjoyed over the years, what is going to happen the day that they decide that, we are the superfluous part of the equation? This is extremely dangerous, and the fact that men are playing God with certain things as opposed to even getting to know themselves is absolutely abominable and a completely frightening prospect going forward. So
yeah, one of the other things we brought into the conversation was about there was a news story about how gay couples can have biological babies through this new sort of technology, and so the way that these transhuman agendas are messing with biology, messing with nature. It's presented as a good thing, and this is how it's kind of connected to eugenics. Eugenics is still today presented as a good thing. It's presented as birth control. It's presented as these things that do help us in our lives. But then on the other side of it, well, should we really be messing with nature like that?
Well, it's also the prerequisite to a lot of corruption of sciences, because look, how is it that you convince a population that they should be drugged so much? It's because, it's not really your fault. Your chemical makeup is not right because that's the way you were born. These things don't take into account the very real scientific concept of epigenetics, which means that there is a reaction on top of the genetics, which comes from the environment, comes from all of the things that you feed into any organism, not just human beings, but all of the things you feed into an organism actually create the characteristics of that organism. Okay? That's like scientific reality, which has nothing to do with the eugenic platform and therefore is dismissed all the time. But that's the reality. I mean, I don't know, maybe you disagree with me, but I don't think so.
No, I think so too. And, it's funny that you bring up epigenetics because that's one of the things that there's a professor over in the UK who's written a book about how great psychopaths are, Professor Kevin Dutton. And that's one of the things that he tries to use to actually make his case that, and basically what he's trying to say is that psychopaths are superior, that they can, work under pressure and, we need people like this to run things in society. And it's like, no, 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 no. And he says, one of the things I challenged him on was his concept of they don't take things personally. I beg to differ. They take everything personally, and they run highly personal smear campaigns on people based on perceived slights, not even just real ones, but perceived ones.
Well,
ones they make up in their heads.
See, that's because psychology is a pseudoscience. That's what the problem is in reality. Okay, because to turn their own terms back on them, you mean to tell me that a megalomaniac is in fact not a psychopath, right? Because I mean, literally, that's pretty much what you just said. A megalomaniac wouldn't be a psychopath per se, would he? I mean, that's just it falls apart every time you try it. And this is why, I mean, I'm not saying that psychology, if it were kept as a pure science, but here's the thing: infiltrated into it once again is the concept of eugenics, and eugenics is all about, look, this is what you got. And that's all there is to it. Not taking into account, again, the environmental aspect of the organism. Okay? You can have the greatest seeds in the world. Okay? Let's just take it down to the botanical level. You can have the greatest seeds in the world. If you do not give them water, or if you give them tainted water, and if you do not give them sunlight, or if you give them very little sunlight, what type of plant will grow from that perfect, wonderful, exemplar of the genetic seed type? It'll be garbage. That's what it is. So you could say that genetics are a factor in the type of individuals that we see occupying, the planet at the moment, but they are not the only factor. They are not the divining rod from which we can begin to say that a hierarchy must emerge. It doesn't work that way. Just scientifically, it's just fraud.
There's also another important factor, which is personal will, someone's willpower. I mean, your willpower alone is extraordinarily powerful. Once you realize how powerful it is, it gets more powerful. And so that's what they're trying to squash with this false information, is that you can't change your reality. Now, I'm not saying that everything that exists in the world is from your brain, but your willpower is significant in the outcomes in your life, no matter, what challenges you've been given to overcome.
So, I mean, really the lesson there is that a very, very good veal loves and embraces his box. That's what it comes down to. Okay? And that's what they're promoting is, please enjoy your confines, please enjoy your limitations, because they're no fault of yours, so don't take any responsibility for any of it.
Right.
You are constrained by something you were born with, so there is no point in arguing about it. This makes you inferior. This makes you in need of the SSRIs. This makes you in need of being medicated and being treated a certain way and being dictated to a certain way psychologically, emotionally, etc., etc. Don't worry, we've got it all under control. And at the end of the day, the people that are really holding the reins or the whips or whatever it is that is corralling most of society are not out for your best interests. Okay? So ipso facto, psychopaths running things.
Right. And if you look at the DSM, whatever, I mean, it itself has been getting increasingly pathological, to the point where normal human emotions are now considered illnesses, mental illnesses, grief, anger, normal things that go on in human beings need to now be medicated. So, yeah, we're at a point where we're told we need to take a pill for everything. And unfortunately, this has been devastating for our youth and for our elders. Elders are being killed by antipsychotics right now.
Right.
Antipsychotics are being used to control older people in retirement communities, and it's killing them. And our kids are being medicated the same way. They're told they have ADHD because they're normal kids that want to run around. Or
Yeah.
they pay attention in school because they're bored. What you're teaching them is not exciting. They're,
Right.
And not to mention attention span, probably from, overuse of computers, things like that, will affect a child's attention span. And then just naturally variances between children.
Yeah. Plus they're being fed garbage, all this GMO nonsense food, which is not really food, which doesn't exactly promote synaptic activity in the first place.
Right.
Gee, I wonder why. Look, we've only got a few minutes left, okay, and I know I knocked you all off track all over the place, and I do apologize, but it's kind of the way I do things.
It's kind of the way I do things, too. I kind of go around and just, let things flow as they flow.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you ever need a guest sometime and you just want to knock somebody around, like conversational wise, I'll volunteer to be your punching bag on your show, so that you can do the same to me, and we'll call it even. But in the last couple of minutes, if you want to make another point, or if you want to direct people to your WordPress site or anywhere else where they can find you on the internet, go right ahead, and then I'll probably just close out the show because my bumper will kick in a couple of minutes. So,
okay,
go right ahead.
Psychopaths in Charge is at kyoung4.wordpress.com. All of my latest podcasts are on peoplesinternetradio.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. You can find me, Kira Young 4 on Twitter, and I think it's Kira Young 3 on Facebook. If you do decide to friend request me, just, on Facebook, just let me know, like you heard me on this show or whatever. That's why because sometimes if I get requests and there's no friends in common, I'm kind of like, what's going on here? So that's basically how you can find me. And I thank you for inviting me onto the show, and I certainly will get back with you and schedule you onto my show. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, you know what? I've enjoyed this as well, and it's definitely something different. I do different things all the time just to make sure people don't say, oh, all he does is harp on one particular subject. So, there's a lot of things I do care about in the world. Most of all, I care that we are allowed to be the human beings we were intended to be, which has nothing to do with the eugenic patterns, by the way. We were all intended to be psychosocial creatures, which are interconnected in one way or another to each other. We are actually a collective of individuals that are truly individuals. So I hope that that's the type of thing that I've helped to promote out here tonight with Kira, and want to thank Roger Landry for joining me in the first hour, and I appreciate every last one of you that decided to tune into this episode of the Ochelli Effect at ucy.tv/TOE, and you can go there, get the archives, all that good stuff. There's a donate button for UCY. There's also a donate button for me. All that kind of thing, whatever you want. There's a chat room. There's a lot of stuff there. I do appreciate it. I do advise you to check out Kira, because every time I flip open something of hers, I'm either impressed or happy to see certain wording. And whether you agree or disagree, I advise you to think for yourselves. Never follow others, not even me. Just think for yourselves and try and embrace the truth of the world around you, because it is an amazing place that we live in. And that's just about it. And I know that bumper's going to kick in and get real, real loud. So thanks again, everybody. And I hope that the rest of your evening goes quite as easily as mine has gone thus far, because the day started out rough. All right. So, Kira, thank you again, and don't worry, we will be talking soon. I know that loud bumper is going to kick in a second.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you very much, and I will disconnect from the network in just a sec as soon as I hear it. Where is it? Where is it?